Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jesse Hubbard, and this is Sound Out. With me today is someone I've been looking forward to speaking with, documentary filmmaker, music documentary filmmaker, David Barry. How are you, David? Welcome to the show.
I'm great. It's great to be here, Jesse. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. And we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff you've done in the past, but we're really going to touch on something that you're doing right now, or you're getting ready to start, I guess I should say. And I'm super excited about it. I wore my Springsteen on Broadway hat for the occasion. You're doing a documentary on the fans of Bruce Springsteen, correct?
That is correct. It's a film called Tramps Like Us. And it's basically, the log line is the extraordinary relationship that Springsteen fans share with the music, the boss, and each other. So it's meant to be like a global conversation of Bruce Springsteen fans where you'll kind of uncover the common threads and experiences that cross cultures and borders and even age groups.
I'm so excited for this. I have to ask. It's uh, fairly obvious to anyone who is a Springsteen fan and who's ever followed his career. But I'm curious, what about his fan base appealed to you so much to the point where you wanted to do a film about him?
Well, I am a Springsteen fan. I've been a Bruce fan since 1980, since I heard Hungry Heart when I was 11 years old. And his music's been with me my entire life, right? And so there's a lot of
Right.
us now. I'm 55, but there's a lot of us, that have been fans our entire lives. And that's an extraordinary thing. And it goes a little bit beyond that because you see people who, it's impacted their lives. They've gotten involved with food banks and things like that, things that Bruce has pushed. They've carried further than that into their communities. Um, and, the songs for many people, they make all the difference in the world, right? And we're all getting older, unfortunately. And Bruce is getting older too. It just felt like this was the time to do this. So we set off to do it, and here we are.
Yeah, it's something that's really interesting. I don't know if you've been able to catch him on any of his recent shows or not, um, but that theme of what you just talked about is very present in his show. Life, mortality, spirituality, all of these things, right?
Yeah, you could really see it. I started to see it in Western Skies, that film and the music for it, and then Letter to You obviously had a lot of those themes in it, and it's carried over into the tour for sure. I think he's in that space too. He's lost friends, um, you know, and he's lost bandmates, and it's just, yeah, I think he's looking back on as he calls it, the 50-year conversation we've all had, right? Um,
Yeah,
and he's looking back on it and kind of taking stock of it.
it's really profound. You know, I mean, for me, you talk about the conversation, and uh, I'll share my experiences with his music. I mean, the first music that I ever remember riding around with my dad when I was a little kid was Bruce. It was the Born in the USA album, and um, you know, uh, whenever I brought my now wife to meet my parents for the first time, we went to a Bruce concert. That's how they met, and my wedding day, it was the music that we were playing, and um, my dad's last day on this earth, I was in the hospital with him and I played Bruce music and we played it at his service. It is truly, you hear people talk about the soundtrack to your life, but I know people know that I'm a fan, but I don't think they realize how important his music is to people like me, like you kind of touched on. It's this relationship with his music that is so profound, it's so deep. And I've never met the man, but he has such a profound impact on my life through his music and his words.
And that's what's extraordinary that you find when you talk to people from around the world, right? You could meet somebody from Japan, completely different culture than you, right? And they could be the same exact songs that resonate for you that resonate for them. And how does that happen? How does that happen where a piece of music can cross boundaries and borders and cultures and age groups and timelines and all of these things and have such a profound impact on people? It's a very, very special thing. Those songs, 1980, when I got into Bruce, I had an older brother. I shared a bedroom with him. I remember my brother going to see the No Nukes concerts. He was older than me and he'd been a fan longer. Um, I actually bought
That's pretty cool
tickets in
too.
'80.
That he was
Yeah,
at
that
those
is.
his concerts.
Yeah,
Pretty cool. Yeah.
it's really cool. I bought tickets in 1985 to go to Giant Stadium. That was the first time I saw Bruce on the Born in the USA tour, and
Oh,
I
at
brought
Giant
my brother.
Stadium.
Yep,
Oh
and I
wow,
brought my
how cool
brother
is
to
that?
it. It was amazing. And the point I'm going to get at is that I was 17 years old, maybe 18. I was 18. And in the opening song, he opens with Born in the USA, right? There's the line about the gas fires down at the refinery, right? And the way that he kind of draws that line out, it's got a little bit of like a rumble and a growl to it. Like I'm getting chicken skin right now because I can still hear it in my ears, like it was like I was just there. So I mean, how does that moment have such an impact on a kid? And 40 years later, I'm still feeling it. Right? This is very special stuff, and it needs to be documented and it needs to be kept. It's a piece of history, really.
Now, do you play you? I think you mentioned this, but I want to clarify. You plan on touching base with people and kind of chatting with people on a worldwide level with this?
Absolutely. The idea is that anybody that wants to be involved can be. There's no screening process or anything like that. And you got to work
Yeah,
with me a little bit to be able to get to, find a place where we can meet. You have to actually show up. You got to do those things, right? But I
sure.
expect to probably have 250 fans in this film. And I'm hoping to get, people from all over the world. When I did the U2 one, I made one similar for U2 in 2017 because that's my other major band is U2. I got people from 25 different nations in that. And I couldn't have dreamed that was going to happen. So I'm hoping that we have a similar experience with Bruce, especially with going over to Europe to film. Hopefully, a lot of the European countries will all kind of travel. It's easier for them to travel, there than it is coming all the way to the United States. So I'm hoping that we get a really great turnout and I can interview people from a lot of countries.
Yeah, that's very exciting. It's an interesting thing to me because while I've never seen him outside of the U.S. do a show, I follow along, and it's clear what a rabid fan base he has across the world.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, you know, so much of what he talks about in his songs is, in my opinion, quintessentially American. The American dream, sometimes not being able to achieve that dream, how you navigate your life, right? Blue collar, so on and so forth. And that is to a lot of people kind of really the basis of his music. But through all of that, I think it's the human connection, right? How we you know forge these relationships together through this life. Kind of like now he's talking a lot about life and mortality in a conversation, and I think that's probably why it appeals to people, even though there's kind of this connection to like the American dream. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great point, Jesse. I think that Bruce is unique because he taps into the central core issue of human existence almost, and that's the idea of hoping for just a little bit better, right? Hoping for just a little bit better for your kids or for you. And the fear that walks hand in hand with that of what if I don't get there, right? And that's something that people can experience anywhere. Everybody has those feelings, no matter where you are. And I think he's tapped into it on a very human level. He uses, you know, imagery and poetic language that is very, American for us, like, uh, racing in the streets, for example, running down on the fire roads. We know exactly what that means, right? That might not mean anything
Yeah.
to somebody in Japan, but the concept of sitting on the porch of her daddy's house and all her dreams have been gone, right? That's something that people can relate to, right? Um,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
stares off alone into the night with the eyes of one who aches for just being born. I mean, that's something that everybody can, you know what I mean? Everybody's felt like that, and it's magical that he can do that.
That's well said. That's I'm very excited for this project. So I'm gonna right now, as we were recording this, I believe there's still 4 days left on the Kickstarter. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
That's right.
It is January the 29th. I'm going to try to turn this around and get this out tomorrow, if at all possible. So while there's still some days on the Kickstarter, hopefully somebody can see this. And um, what I want to know is, I've seen a lot of musicians who I admire and filmmakers who I admire over the years use the Kickstarter model. What about that model appeals to you? Because I know that you've done that a lot with your other films, which we'll talk about.
Yes.
But
Yes.
the Kickstarter model, why go that route?
Simply put, because I like the idea of it being all or nothing. I don't want to raise part of the money and then be responsible to people for a film that I don't have everything I need to complete the film, right? I want to raise enough to finish a film, not to just start it. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't really like the fundraising part of it. Unfortunately, I'm not a wealthy guy. I'm just a regular guy like everybody else. So I've got to raise funds to be able to do the things that I do, right?
Sure.
But I don't like that part of the journey at all. That's the hard part. But Kickstarter's great that way because you know that if you get to the goal, then you have what you need to do the project, so long as you've done your budgeting right and things like that. And I'm an experienced filmmaker. I've made 10 of these, so
Yeah.
um, but
Does
that's
it
what I like
ultimately give
about it.
you does it ultimately give you more creative control as well?
Well, so if you're going this route, right? Because I'm not dealing with any kind of distributors or anything like that yet. Yeah, I do. Of course, I hope to be able to distribute the film. I hope to be able to get it into film festivals, and we'll see if we can get it onto a Hulu or a Netflix or something like that. We have to get there, though, right? But what I
Hmm.
don't want is any of those things interfering with the story. And that might sound a little artsy, but like I like to go where the story takes me. So I'll very quickly, when the cameras start to roll at the end of March, and I start hearing stories from people, it will start leading me um, to where it's going to go. And it's people, when I interview them, I ask them. There's a form that they fill out, which is going live tonight to sign up for interviews. And that'll be on the trampslikeusfilm.com webpage and on the Facebook
Oh,
page.
very cool.
But
Very
anyway,
cool.
part of it is they tell me their Bruce story. So I know a little bit about them when they sit down, and I kind of know what they want to talk about. And then it's my job to just get them to feel comfortable and have a conversation with me. And they will tell me what they really want to tell me, and it'll steer the story where it wants to go. And none of that is possible if I'm not doing it in the independent way like that, where my sole allegiance is to story. I don't have any responsibility to a distributor.
No, I absolutely love that, and I completely appreciate where you're coming from with that. That was it was something I was curious about. And I always like to chat with people about that because I have friends in the music industry and the film industry, and you know it's always a common theme that they do not enjoy the fundraising aspect of it because it takes
Yeah.
away from being able to do what you really love, which is the art itself, right?
Yeah, but
Um,
there's a cool part about the Kickstarter thing is that you build a great community around it, right?
yeah,
And that's been a
yeah,
lot of fun for me. I'm making friends. I put it on a post on Facebook. There's strangers who are becoming friends already, right? And through this
yeah.
process, I'll make a lot of friends around the world because of this, and that's exciting to me. I like watching people get excited about the idea and kind of rally around it, and you're building a community for it, and that's amazing too. So that part of it I do like. I just don't like I'm not a salesman, basically, I guess.
Yeah, the schmoozing with the corporate bigwigs and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but what you just said is right in line with the experience and the relationship that everybody has with Bruce and his music. It's
Mhm.
making that friendship, and I'll give an example of that. How I found out about you was through the Bruce Springsteen super fan group, the Spring Nuts,
Mhm.
which you and I are both members of, which is really
Yep,
really cool. How
it
did how
is.
did you find out about them initially and
Uh,
forge a relationship with them?
yeah, I mean, I've known about them forever. I think everybody, any Bruce Springsteen fan knows about the Spring Nuts, right?
Mhm.
When I got the idea to do this, probably back in I'm going to say October. I've known about this idea for a long time. When I was making Dream Out Loud, a lot of people said to me, "You need to do this for Bruce Springsteen too. You're a huge fan, and there's a lot of crossover in those fan bases, right? A lot of people who love you
Mhm.
too also love Bruce Springsteen." And I said, well, in 2013, Springsteen and I was made. And I thought that that was a good film. But I learned a lot when I made the U2 one about the community and the community approach to the storytelling with it, that I realized that the story was different. So it was in the back of my head. And, he got sick and he canceled those dates, right? And I think for the first
Mhm.
time, I felt
Right.
like my hero was, mortal. You know what I mean? Like
I
Bruce
do.
is human, like all the rest of us, right? And
I
so when
had
the
I had
tickets,
tickets for the Columbus and the Pittsburgh show, And
Yeah.
my first thought was like, oh my God, I hope he's okay. And then I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, he's okay. How long do I have to wait to see him?
But I mean, because this is the man who did 3.5, 4 hour concerts, right? Like,
I
he
know.
pours everything he can into what he does. And I don't remember him ever canceling a show before. I mean, maybe he has, but there's probably been a
Not to
few,
this
but
extent that I
I
recall.
couldn't, yeah. He had to literally, postpone a whole leg, right? And that was shocking.
Yeah.
And so when the tickets went on sale, um, for the European leg, right? It was like a thunderstruck moment for me where something just said to me, if you're going to do this, you need to do it now, right? So to get to the Spring Nuts, what I always do is I reach out to the different fan communities and I reach out. So I reached out to Spring Nuts. I reached out to a couple of different podcasters, a couple of different groups, right? And I introduce myself and I say, hey, I'm a filmmaker. I do all music documentaries. I'm also a Bruce fan. I want to do this thing. Howie Chaz responded to me from Spring Nuts, and we had a really
Very
good
cool.
conversation. He watched my Dream Out Loud film, and then he was like, "Yeah, I can see where you want to go. I understand the vision, and I believe in it. I think that you're a real guy, and I want to back this and support it." And he opened up the doors to Spring Nuts for me. And I without Howie, without Jesse Jackson from his Set Lusting Bruce podcast, without a couple of other people, um, it wouldn't be funded. I mean, it's not me.
Right.
It's people stepping up and saying, you know what, I believe in this project and I want to see something happen, and they start the ball rolling, and then it takes off from there, and it builds a community around it, right?
Yeah.
And that's amazing. I love the groups though. I mean, Spring Nuts is amazing. I love what they do. I love the videos they've put together. They are a diehard and energized group for sure.
Yeah, I love that group. I've only been officially a member for about a year. I've known about him for a little, for substantially longer, but I just didn't know enough about it. I thought it was a private thing. I didn't really know what it was, and you'd see the shirts at the shows. And my wife and I were at the Detroit show on his last year, and chatting with this lovely couple from Canada at the hotel. We were both leaving the next day. And they were telling me, it's like, no, it's open for anybody that wants to join. You should join. I joined right there with them. They sent me the invite. And I just love being able to interact with so many like-minded people on a regular basis, and,
Yeah,
and, and
yeah,
finding out about stuff like what you're doing first. I
yeah,
wouldn't have found out about what you're doing as early on as I did. And which is, it's a great group. It's really fun. And I've just loved talking with everybody that's a part of it.
yeah, yeah. And they're Howie's incredibly humble. He's like constantly told me he's going to kill me for saying this here, but like, no, don't give me. It's not me. It's the group. It's your idea. It's this. He's very, very humble. He pushed me to, and then introduced me to a couple of the group admins from Europe and other sites because he wanted to make sure the word got out into these other groups too. So he's not in any
Yeah.
way ever looked at it as like this is Spring Nuts. You know what I mean? That's just the group that
Yeah.
he started because
Yeah.
he knew that there was a need to connect with Springsteen fans, right?
Yeah.
And man, they've done some cool stuff.
Absolutely have. I want to go back to something you talked about a moment ago, and it was interesting that you brought it up because I was going to ask you the Springsteen and I documentary that came out. You said it was 2013 is about when that was?
2013, yeah.
2013. So that was really cool. I enjoyed that. Um, you touched on it, but I'm curious if you can go in a little bit more in depth about how yours will differ from that.
Yeah,
You know what I
absolutely.
mean? Because here we are over a decade later. Obviously, things are
Yeah.
different, but
Yeah, thank you for asking that and giving me the chance to talk about it. So, Springsteen and I was a cool concept. What they did is they said, there's so many fans out there. Let's ask them to send in videos of what Bruce Springsteen means to me, right? And people sent in all these videos, and then they picked and choose the people that they wanted to put into the film. And their hope was that they could pick a couple of different kinds of stories that then when the entire global Springsteen fan base sees it, you see somebody whose individual story you kind of relate to, right? And to a certain degree that works. Where Tramps Like Us differs is that I will take an idea like the first time somebody heard Born to Run, right? And I'll say, because I'll ask people, what was the song that got you? And inevitably there'll be 50 people who say it was Born to Run, let's say, right? And so I'll say, okay, well, what was it about that song? And one person will start an idea, right? And then you cut to the next person who continues the idea, and then the next person who continues the idea, and the next person who continues it, right? But maybe that second person is from Belgium, and maybe the third person is just a 17-year-old kid from, Sweden, you know what I mean? And it jumps around, and that's how you get this concept of it being a universal theme that all these people have felt, across borders, across time, across, all these different things. And so that is a very different way of telling that story. And then you go into the idea that I'm going to shoot all the interviews. So I'm going to control what it looks like. So you don't get a lot of different, looks and backgrounds and things like that. And the audio quality will be all controlled. They did a great job in post on Springsteen and I, but they were getting things from different sources, right? And so just technically, that's a challenge. It's a hurdle you got to get over, right? So we're not going to have that. And then finally, you're absolutely right. There's 10 more years, 11 more years of experiences now, right? We're further down the road. So
when it had, I'm trying to remember, whenever Bruce had started doing shows again after Clarence had passed when that came out. So yeah, that I answered my own question there. Yeah. But obviously a lot has changed, in that time frame. I remember hearing about whenever they were collecting the stories, and I'm like, that'd be cool to do. I just never got around to it. I'm like, they're never going to use my thing, blah, blah, blah. And then I watched it, and they had the people backstage at one of Bruce's shows, and they all got to meet him. I was like, son of a bitch, I should have submitted my story. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
They didn't tell me that could be part of it.
I don't think anybody knew that, right?
Anybody knew that. But it sounds like what you're talking about is a much more personal and universal at the same time connection that we all have, which was to your point. Yeah, it was kind of like a little bit of these generalized stories, and we can all find something that we can connect to in that. But it's when it's so specific to an individual, yet you have those individuals all across the world connecting these dots. I think that is a really cool approach.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's what I hope. It worked very well with Dream Out Loud, and I think that the fan bases are very similar. So that's where, in my head, that's where the story starts from. But again, we'll see where the story takes me. It could end up cutting together and feeling different.
True. So you've done. This is your 10th or 11th?
This is my 11th
film.
Your 11th film.
So you've done quite a few. On I was looking into this. I found it very interesting. Like traditional Hawaiian island music.
That's right.
Is that accurate?
That's right.
Which I thought was really, really cool. You did the U2 One Dream Out Loud. Obviously, you are a huge music fan to be doing this, but what is it about the language, the general language of music and the art of music that appealed to you so much to the point where you wanted to dedicate your life to making these films?
Well, I mean, music was my first love. I played music when I was in college, and I, tried hard and worked hard at, playing in bands, and I wasn't fortunate enough to get a record deal or things like that, but it was always my first love. Yeah. I fell into doing film.
I have a podcast. That's why I'm not playing music myself.
I fell into doing film because I wanted to make stuff that would support the things I was trying to do with music, right?
I love that.
I love telling musical stories. Musical stories are because they connect with you on a lot of different levels: spiritual, emotional, intellectually, historically. And so it's just, what I'm drawn to. It's, I just love helping, and I love helping musicians tell their story too. That was what the great thing we did with the Hawaiian films is that, those guys were all master slack key guitarists, and slack key music is a style of open tuning that developed in Hawaii. It was taught to them by the Spanish who came over to teach the Hawaiians how to be cattlemen and cowboys, right? Because they had a lot of cattle over there. And I'm going to make the story real short, but they brought their guitars with them, and then around the campfire at night, they taught the Hawaiians how to play guitar and play music, and then they left. And when they left the guitars, but they never taught the Hawaiians how to tune them. So the Hawaiians, being thrifty people, thought to tune the guitar to the sound of the voice that was singing, right? And they figured out how to play a basic melody and a rhythm and a lead part using finger picking, right, all at once on the guitar. That's the essence of Slack Key. Now, Hawaiian music is amazing because it carries the history and the culture of Hawaii with it, right? And it's a very poetic language. And oftentimes there are two meanings to something that's being sung about. So the lyrics could be about a waterfall, let's say, right? But he could really be talking about a beautiful woman, right? It's just very poetic and beautiful music. And I lived on Maui for 15 years, and I got to know George Kahumoku Jr., who was a 5-time Grammy Award-winning slack key player. And he kind of like adopted me even in my 40s, right? And brought me into his musical family. And we just started making these films. And the idea was to make them while these guys were still alive so that they could tell their story in their own voice. And I'm really proud of what we did with that. And that's really what kicked it off.
Yeah, and you answered my next question about how you were exposed to that style of music and where that all started. So you lived over there and really fell in love with it.
Beautiful, beautiful music, right? I mean, George was fun because like most of my time with George, with Uncle George, and he's this 5-time Grammy Award-winning musician, but he's also like, he's called Hawaii's Renaissance man. He's a big-time farmer and a teacher, and those are the things he loves the most. So I learned a lot of the culture by working with him on his farm, right? And we'd be out there and he'd be like doing stuff and then he'd be teaching me at the same time. And then after breakfast, we'd go inside and he'd play guitar and play music, right? But like, I spent more time with him doing those other things, but he opened up that world of music to me and he taught me the cultural connection with it. And that was so extraordinary.
That's so cool. So I read that this is your 11th film that you've done. I've read that you directed, edited, produced everything, all yourself on all of these.
Yep.
How important was it to you from the get-go to wear all of those hats?
It's important to me, but it's also necessity because I make micro budget films. I make a film on like Tramps Like Us. The budget is around $40,000. Now, hopefully, we'll be able to raise up to $50,000. That makes it a little easier for me. But to make a feature length film, to actually make it like if somebody were to hire me to do it, the budget would be 4 or 5 times that easily. But I've worked in film and television since the mid 1990s. That's when I started. And I started like everybody else. I was a production assistant. And then I learned audio. And then I learned camera. And then I learned editing. And then I learned, lighting. And I learned, how to produce and then finally direct. So I can wear all those hats because I know how to do all those things. And I have equipment. I have cameras. I have the edit equipment. I have lights. I have audio. I have all those things. And then the next step of that is like, so much of these films is just interviewing somebody, and that's pretty easy to do with just a couple of cameras and yourself. Now, if we had to do a lot of things with bigger crews, then I'd have to bring in more people, of course. Now, what it also does is to speak to your question is that it does allow me the freedom of knowing at all times everything that's going on in the story, and that because I'm doing all of those things, what I shot, I remember all of it when I get into post. It's amazing to me that I can remember all that stuff, but like I'll just look at somebody and I'll know everything they said in their interview. So it's easy for me to get to the content and things like that. And that sticks with me because like, I've seen friends from Dream Out Loud in Las Vegas the past couple months because U2's playing here, right? Yeah. And when I run into them, when I go out and I see them and everything, and you get a hug and it's great to see you, and then I remember everything that person said 7 years ago in their interview with me. You know what I mean? It's like it's still there. So that does make it easier as a storyteller when you can recall all of that.
You have your finger on the pulse of everything that's going on at all times, right?
At all times in the film.
It's very interesting.
Now the flip side of that, the downside of that is, Jesse, is I literally have to live it. Like I live this film. Like for the next year, this is going to be, it's going to be Tramps Like Us all day, all the time for me.
Sounds like a good problem to have.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm going to bust your chops for a minute here. Okay. So I understand completely your love affair with the Hawaiian music. But whenever you started to look at more traditional rock and roll bands, why I like U2 a lot. Why U2 before Bruce? I got to know. Why not Bruce first?
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the story. I was actually a Bruce fan a year before I was a U2 fan. Okay. I became a Bruce fan in 1980 with Hungry Heart, right? And
Hungry Heart,
then
yeah, yeah.
a year later, when October came out by U2, I fell in love with the song Gloria. When I first heard that, I saw it on MTV, and I came from an Irish family in New Jersey, and you look at the music video and the kids on the docks from that, they looked like they could have been my cousins, right? So it was like, I found something there. Those two bands have been the pillars in my life, and they've gotten me through everything in my life. Now, U2 maybe a little bit more on a spiritual side, and then Bruce on the other side. Now, to answer your question, why? I got the idea to make these kind of films in 2001, seeing U2 on the Elevation tour. And the reason was because it was the very first time I was ever on the floor for any concert. I'd never been on the concert floor before. I was like 30 years old, right? And I couldn't believe I was going to be on the floor for a show. And next to me were these 16-year-old kids who were so excited because they were going to see U2 play Beautiful Day. They didn't know any of the other songs, none of them, right? But I could see that this was a generational story. So then
Yeah.
I started to think about it in terms of Bruce and in terms of U2. But I was only 30. I was just starting to get to the point where I was going to be able to direct and things like that. And, you start to formulate that idea, and these things take time to germinate in your head. 2013, Springsteen and I came out, right? And so something like it had already been kind of done, all right? And there were things in that film that I liked, and there were things in that film that I didn't like as a filmmaker. And so I kind of made some mental notes and kept going down the path I was going. And then 2017, I finally figured out how to do the U2 one, and I started making it. And that's when a lot of people kept saying, no, 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 you have to do this for Bruce too. You have to do this for Bruce too. But as a filmmaker, you have reverence for other people's work, and so I didn't want to just say, oh, well, I could just go out and just do that too. It was only
Yeah.
because as I'm getting older and watching Bruce, when Bruce canceled those shows, and I follow everything online, it just made me feel like something needs to be done about it, for it before it's too late, right? There were So it's 7 years since I made Dream Out Loud, and 4 people that were in that film have passed away, right? Same thing's going to start happening with our community, with Bruce, right? It's just
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I just felt like it's just time. This needs to be done. So I felt like a real urgency to kind of get off the bench and go and do it. But had Tramps or had Springsteen and I not been made, then yeah, it very well may have been the first one that I did. But that came out when I was still trying to figure out how to do this kind of story.
You know, damn it. All I can say is that's a really fantastic answer. I was trying to tease you and bust your chops a little bit, and that was like the best possible answer you could have given.
I'm only honest, man. That's just,
I totally get it. I mean, it's cool. There is a lot of crossover between U2 and Bruce's fan base. Obviously, the relationship between Bruce and Bono and E Street Band and the whole U2.
yeah.
I mean, it's really, it's really connected. So, I mean, I get why you would be into both. I think it's really, really cool.
Those two artists. My dad was like a kind of like a blue collar middle class worker. Worked for the phone company his entire life. Was a wonderful father, but he wasn't a guy who chased dreams and things like that, right? I'm sure he had them. He wanted to be a pilot, and he was a small plane pilot, and I have wonderful memories of that. But like, I don't remember him like saying, this is something I wanted to go do and put it out in the world. The reason that I'm like that is because Bruce and U2 taught me how to dream, right? U2 taught me the concept of dreaming out loud and making something real. Bruce taught me the other side of the coin of, kind of like dreams are sacred ground, because if you get it wrong, it's something that you have to live with, right? He was a little bit more grounded in reality with it, right? And those are lessons that those two taught me. So they're a huge part. I mean, they are at the core of who I am.
I couldn't help but notice the similarities between you talking about your father and Bruce talking about his father.
Yeah.
Very, very similar. It sounds like a very similar type of man. Just nose the grindstone, get the work done. Not necessarily go after the big dream.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's
absolutely
right.
Whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I think it's really cool. Great answer to that. I want to know. So you said you have a forum up where people can submit to be in the film to tell their story. you said roughly about 250 people, give or take, you're going to be
So
talking
that's what I
to
expect.
something.
That's what I expect. You know,
Yeah.
you put a call out there and everybody says they want to do it, right? But the
Yeah.
reality is that life will get in the way for a lot of people. They won't be able to
I would
follow up.
imagine that, yeah, I would imagine, I mean, you know better than I do, having done so many films, but just with the word of mouth and the publicity that this has gotten already amongst Springsteen fans, you probably will have to make some tough choices and narrow it down. Ultimately, how will you choose the people that you are going to speak with? What are you looking
Well,
for
I
in them?
mean, I'm not looking for anything. I'll talk to everybody that actually shows up, and I'll get everybody into the film. It might be
I
just
love
a
that.
little five. It might be a little 5 to 7 second clip. It might not be your whole entire story, right? But
That's
but
awesome.
but I'll get everybody into it. But the reality is that people get excited about an idea, and then a few months later, life intervenes sometimes, and sometimes they can't make it to the show where I'm going to be interviewing at, or they can't, or I'll say, okay, well, the time is this, between 10 a.m. and 4 o'clock, like when people are going to start lining up to go in, and this is the location, and they'll be like, oh, well, I've got a fan meetup that I'm going to be out over there, so I can't make it. Believe it or not, that happens, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, sure.
um,
Get that.
there's a process involved where I send everybody will send in the forms. We'll probably get 400 forms that come in, and we start reaching out to people to see where they're going to be, and we kind of create like a production calendar of who we're going to be and where we're going to go. And then some of those people don't even respond to our first
Yeah.
reach out, because it was just a whim that they were thinking about it. It's just the nature of the beast, right? People get kind of uh, preoccupied with other things and things like that. But I'm expecting around 250 for this. Probably will go all the
Well,
way through the
if you
process with
need
me.
somebody, like if you do a, maybe like a director's cut or like an extended version, and you need somebody to talk for 5 or 6 hours about why they love Bruce's music, let me know. I'm your guy. Shut up already, Jesse. That's enough. We got it.
Yeah, there
Um,
may be a longer director's cut to it.
I love that. So I wanna, you know, we've been talking so much about Bruce. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to talk about some of your favorite songs or favorite albums or the ones that have meant the most to you over the years. I like to do.
uh,
Let's do it like
yeah.
this. I like to do a thing with my guests, the Mount Rushmore of things. So let's talk
Oh,
the Mount. I know. I couldn't do it either, but that's why I'm asking you. The
okay.
Mount Rushmore of his. We'll
Of his
do we'll
work.
do songs. We'll do songs.
All right. So yeah, I'll always have a special place in my heart for Hungry Heart, of course. Racing in the
Hmm.
Street is the one that gives me chills, and I've only heard it a few times live. Um, Darkness, gosh,
Yeah.
Prove It All Night, Promised Land, Badlands. Those are the typicals. Kitty's Back, uh, The Flood. Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
I've never I haven't been at a show where he's done Blinded by the Light. I'd like to see that, right? Um, I'm a little bit more of a Bruce and the E Street Band fan, though, right? After the Tunnel of Love Express tour, when he kind of like laid the band off for a little bit and he was doing his own thing, there were songs that I liked. There were a couple things on Devils and Dust that I liked. Tom Joad was great, right? But
Yeah.
I was a little upset that the E Street Band wasn't there. I didn't go to see him when he was just doing solo stuff at all. And then when he brought the band
Yeah.
back, I started seeing him again. But the last time I saw him was actually, to be completely honest, was the Magic Tour. Because when Danny died, it was strange. But when Clarence died, I haven't been able to bring myself to want to go. And like, I watch everything online. I'm watching shows online all the time. But
Sure.
and I was living in Hawaii also, which makes it a lot harder. And now I'm back on the
I
mainland. So,
understand that because um,
but I mean, it was hard. I couldn't
yeah,
imagine seeing him without Clarence. It was really a challenge for me. So to keep going on the music, we can talk about that in a minute, but because I'm thinking about the music.
yeah,
But
yeah,
with
yeah,
the
yeah,
solo albums, right? Western Stars is the first one that I've really, really loved. And I actually like
yeah.
that one a little bit more than Letter to You until recently. And now Letter to You is starting to to take a little bit more of my time when I'm listening to it. But there was something about the imagery and the storytelling on Western Stars that I just thought was just beautiful. It was almost like an E Street album, but it wasn't, right? Because he didn't have all the keys and the horns and things like that.
It
But
just feels like, to me, it just feels like a spring day with the drizzle, like a little bit of fog in the air, slight rain, you're
mm-hmm.
driving, maybe sitting on your porch. I don't know, like through
Yeah,
middle America. It's just what it feels like to me.
yeah. And then Letter to You is amazing, and it's starting to really uh, take a lot of place in mine. 10th
Right.
Avenue is another one, man. I mean, it's
It's the
impossible
big
for me
Mount
to pick
Rushmore,
one.
David. It's the big Mount
I can't,
Rushmore.
you know what I mean? Like, I can't pick one. Like,
No,
there,
no real Springsteen fan could. No,
you
you
know
know
what
what
I
I
mean?
mean?
It's
Big Four.
impossible.
I I love like Letter to You. That came out. That was the first Bruce album that came out after my father had passed, and it was so profound. You know what I mean? I felt it
Mm-hmm.
was one of those things. Whereas I felt, as I'm sure so many other people did, I felt like Bruce was singing to me. You know what I mean? Like he was singing
Yeah,
about me and my dad,
yeah.
and it was just so. Certainly, it's heavier. It's not as light and breezy as Western
Mm-hmm.
Stars is,
Yeah.
but that's that connection. Like, oh man, it really got me right
I
out of the
think he was
gate.
getting a lot of things out he needed to get out. I mean, those songs,
Yeah,
he's been doing that with me and like my dad, even from when I was a teenager, like Independence Day, Factory, these songs from the river. I mean,
yeah.
they're
Oh
all
man,
about those relationships, and
yeah.
that's what's so special about it. So there's so many of them. Like it
I
it's
just
hard
wanted
to
to. I wanted to see where you would go with it. That was a
do I
great
pass
answer
the
as well. That was
test?
another great answer.
It's
Far be it from me
impossible.
to test you. I was just curious what the answer was. Just like I
uh,
love it. I ask you for your top four, you give me 20. That's awesome. That's
there's
great,
too
man.
many, too many.
There's too many. Do you have a favorite show that you have went to of his
Now
that
that
really
I have a
stands
good
out?
answer to. It's not the question. I bet you it's not the answer you want to get. And that's always the last one I saw with him because and I do the same thing with the U tours too. When I get to see these guys now, I'll say a prayer like when I see Bruce when I'm leaving. I'll be like, "Thank you, God, for letting me see him one more time, and if possible, can I see him one more time?" Right? Because
Yeah.
because they're not a guarantee anymore. You know what I mean?
There's no
And
guarantee. There's no guarantee. Yeah.
so, but it's always the last time I was in the room with them. You know what I mean? Because you're in
I
the
love,
room with Bruce Springsteen.
man,
Yeah,
I get it. I think everybody watching this will get it. I call it I call it the Church of Springsteen,
and it doesn't
and
matter where
just
you
get,
are.
doesn't matter.
I
Yep.
mean,
Doesn't matter
I
where you're
love.
sitting, just get in the building,
Yeah,
right?
you just want to be in the building. You know.
Yeah. That's exactly what that's how I feel, man. It doesn't matter just to be part of that energy. Man, this has been so good. I could talk to you for hours about this. This is so much fun. You've been a great guest. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you
We're
for
gonna
letting me
wrap
talk
it
a little
up.
bit. Thank you for letting me talk a little bit about being a fan because since I
Yeah,
started
man.
the
Yeah.
film, everybody wants to talk to me about the film, and that's great and it's important, right? And I need to get the word out
Yeah.
about it. But I I, I think that sometimes it's easy for people to forget that I'm a fan, just like all of you guys, just like everybody else. You know what I mean? These songs have
Yeah.
made all the difference to me too. That's why I'm doing it.
No, yeah,
And
I
so it's
totally get
nice
it.
to
It's
get
been
to
so
talk
great.
Bruce for
Yeah.
a minute.
Yeah, you just geeking out over Bruce and the E Street
Yeah.
Band.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. You said you're from Jersey originally. Is that what you
Mhm.
said?
Yep.
Where at in Jersey?
I was born in Pequannock Township, which is Pompton Plains, Wayne area, North Jersey, right? Kind of suburbs of
Okay.
New
Yeah.
York City. I
Yeah.
graduated high school from Allentown High School, which is Central Jersey. My dad worked in
Yeah.
Freehold, and I worked at
Yeah.
Six Flags Great Adventure when I was a high school kid, right? So Jackson Cage, Route 9, all that area, Asbury Park. I used to, go driving down to the shore and, always hoping to see Bruce, and I never ran into him. I got a lot of, "Oh, you just missed him," but I've never
I
actually
love
run
that.
into him anywhere. But I am a product of that area. I moved away when I was 22. I moved
Yeah.
out west. I went to UNLV, and I pretty much lived out west and then Hawaii, and but I'm a Jersey kid.
I love that. I didn't know that. So am I. I was born in Princeton, lived part of my
Okay,
childhood in Jersey, and then went back in adulthood to work at a radio station out there. And
love Princeton. I used to
yeah,
that wasn't far from Allentown where I graduated high
yeah,
school. It was like
yeah. I got a lot of family still out in like New Brunswick, Kendall Park, Central
Yep,
Jersey area.
yep,
Still out
yep,
there.
yep.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. That's
That's
great.
awesome.
When do you plan on uh, getting everything started and kind of like finishing up with this ultimately?
Well, it'll take me a year to get to the to the cut of the film, and then
Yeah,
a film is never really ever truly done. You're always going to be tweaking it a little bit here and there, but there'll be a point where I'm ready to show it to people, right? And that will be probably, if I had to
fair enough.
guess, it'll probably be January, February of 2025, right? Um,
That sounds
I'm
right.
now that we've passed the goal, right? I'm officially started. The form is ready to
Okay.
go. I'm going to announce that tonight. People will start signing up. I'm starting to look at, how I'm going to get to everywhere I need to get to and doing all of that. I'll start rolling cameras probably in Phoenix at the show there. That's certainly my plan. We'll see when I see all the interview requests that come in. That kind of dictates where I go, but I have a feeling the first one will be Phoenix.
And do you know? Yeah, I know you talked about different possibilities, but how are people going to be able to find this when it's all said and done and you have it finalized?
The film, or just being to
The
get into
film,
it?
the film. I'm sorry,
Oh,
Tramps Like Us. Yeah,
it'll be everywhere. I mean,
yeah,
I'll work through all the groups to to announce when it's done. I will do a premiere. I want to do a premiere in a theater in New Jersey, because where else would you do it, right? But what I want to
yeah.
do is this: when it goes to air, let's say we choose 8 o'clock at night in New Jersey in a theater. When it starts to air there, I will stream it live on the Tramps Like Us page at the same exact time, so that fans
Yeah,
around the
that's awesome.
world can all see it at once.
I love that.
And then from there, I'll do screenings in other places, and then after Bruce fans have seen it, then you go into film festivals, and then from there to try and get distribution for it. But it's for the community first. That's why I'm making
Yeah,
it, right?
I love it, man. I'm so excited about this. I'm so excited for you to do this. This has been great talking with you, my friend. It's been great.
Thank you, man. Stay in touch.
Absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, filmmaker David Barry, Tramps Like Us. Look for it coming out soonish. We're gonna keep our eyes peeled, and thanks everybody for watching. This has been another fantastic episode of Sound Out. I'm your host Jesse Hubbard, and until next time, friends.